Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 120. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Tuesday, the 23rd. The Steelers are currently scheduled to report to training camp 1 month from yesterday, I believe. Whether or not that's going to end up being the date is
tentatively scheduled.
Yeah, whether or not that's going to end up being the date, we'll see, obviously, because of the ongoing concerns about the coronavirus pandemic. But the summer vacation is starting to wind down, at least we hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the good news is it's happening for a lot of sports, too. Baseball is back through a lot of pain and anxiety. They finally have that back, and NHL is getting closer. Basketball and football on the horizon, hopefully, as well. I have a little bit of Steelers news to start things today.
Hey, neither one of those are back until the first pitch or the first puck's dropped, So.
Oh, be my ray of sunshine today, Dave.
Hey, just trying to keep it real. The old saying back when I used to sell coffee for a living was, you'd land one of these huge truck stops or something like that. The old saying was, "Ain't nothing sold until something's bought and paid for." So.
Fair enough.
We'll have to keep your fingers crossed that maybe we'll have some more major sports back here in a little bit.
Well, I guess the same can be true about Ben in his rehab and recovery until we see him actually throwing passes in a game. That is not 100% completed, but everything sounds so far so good, which has been the story of really his entire rehab and recovery progress. He was, I believe, over the weekend, part of the Pittsburgh Man Up session, which they've been doing for years now. Had to do it virtually this year with everything pandemic related, but I mostly talked about faith and family and all that. He did briefly get asked about his elbow and his rehab and how he feels, and he says, quote, "I think it's going great. It feels awesome. Still working into it. Luckily, I don't have to be ready to go until September, hopefully, but it feels great ahead of schedule and everything, so I'm excited, most importantly, throwing without pain." And that last sentence, of course, is the biggest sentence of all now that he is back to throwing NFL-type passes, doing so without pain, during the throw, after the throw the next day, whatever the case may be, is a huge one of the final hurdles that he's had to clear. So, again, all signs are positive for Ben being healthy and ready for week one.
Yeah, so far so good. And, he released some Father's Day pictures there, and the one with him on the golf course with his oldest son, Benjamin Jr. He looks fine. He certainly doesn't look like 300-pound Ben like many wanted people to believe there for a little bit. So he is looking good, and Connor and Juju and Switzer and geez, who else? A few other guys have said that arm is lively, and that he's in so many words back to being the same Ben there. So obviously we won't know for sure until he hits the field here in what is it, like 83 days is the regular season opener against the Giants. So we don't have too much longer to wait. But as we've said all offseason here, until we have reasons to be concerned, there's no reason to be concerned.
Right, and everything that we've heard from Kevin Colbert, from Ben, from Dr. Mel, who was on the podcast last week, all encouraging signs there, and I'm still fully expecting a complete recovery. Some other Steelers news here. It's kind of Steelers-related news. It's only in a 6 degrees sort of way. Martavis Bryant back in the news a little bit. He has applied for reinstatement from the NFL following what Josh Gordon did, I think, a week or two ago. So Bryant trying to get back in the NFL. More power to him. I hope he is able to get reinstated and have an opportunity, though I very much doubt that'll happen in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, look, it was news, and really, I think there's still only the one source reporting that as of yet. We just passed along because it is, verified Twitter source, a serious contributor there, so no reason not to believe it. It matches up with the timeline and everything that you would expect to go along with this. Here's the thing. I put this on Twitter not too many days ago. You keep wondering what could have been with him. Especially
Sure.
there at the height. I think I wrote an article one time about on course or has the ability to become potentially the best deep pass receiver the league has seen since Randy Moss. And obviously we saw glimpses of that throughout his career, but just right when it seemed like that he might make that next leap forward and become that guy, he ran into the off the field issues there. So he's obviously a little bit older now. I think he's what is he, 28 now?
I can look it up. Right around there.
Right around in there. And once that speed, look, his game was always kind of predicated on that speed. Haven't really seen or heard too much of him on the social media accounts working out or anything like that. At this point, and if you go back to and look at kind of how his days in with the Raiders ended there. Did he know this latest suspension was coming? Is that what was keeping him kind of frustrating John Gruden, if you will? When is he going to get on the field and do this, do that? After he was, obviously the Steelers traded him to the Raiders, and then the Raiders cut him, and then they signed him back, and then then he got suspended. All that's not good, obviously. Now, if he were to get reinstated and all, and with the new rules in the CBA and all that kind of stuff, will a team take a chance on him at perhaps the minimum or slightly above? Yeah, I think there's a chance of that, especially if training camps open on time and Martavis can get reinstated within that amount of time. Now, remember, he's going to be he's going to be behind the eight ball, not having OTAs and all like that. You kind of wonder what kind of football conditioning he's in at this point as well too. Is this anything that the Steelers would be interested in? Moving forward, even for a minimum price, I kind of doubt it. They usually move on from guys like this, they very rarely revisit it. And
Right.
I wish them all the best. Look, I would love to see guys like this, put their past behind them and come back and show the world and make those big plays once again. I'm just not convinced that Bryant will be able to do that, though.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments basically 100%. I think a team would give him a chance because that talent is so unique and there really is not much risk associated if you're signing him for the minimum, and that's definitely what you're going to sign him for. With the NFL relaxing some of its marijuana rules and policy and testing, that should help maybe curb the risk of a suspension as well. But yeah, the talent is big. It just won't happen in Pittsburgh. They've moved on, as you said. They've revamped the receiver core. They have a ton of young guys. They have a solid top four group of receivers right now. There's probably no interest in adding Martavis Bryant, any potential distraction that would come in that way. So we'll see if Bryant gets reinstated. That's step one. I think and I hope that eventually he will, and I think he will get a shot in the NFL. Will he stick? Will it work? I mean, it's impossible to say. And you're right, he is 28 years old, turning 29 in late December. So age is potentially going to be a factor, but he's been out of the league for a while. There's not a lot of wear and tear recently. So we'll see. But, I'm rooting for Martavis Bryant because that talent, as you said, was immense, and it's disappointing to not be able to see it, reach its full potential.
Yeah, and look, you always wonder about what a guy's motivation is now at this point. Is it money, which I'm sure he needs some of right now, or is it his love of the game? So that's another thing that you kind of worry about with him.
Yeah, a lot of concerns with Martavis Bryant, but again, I think the talent is enough that it's enough to give some team, not Pittsburgh, a chance to give him a look at least one last time in the NFL. Dave, speaking of wide receivers, I did a video breakdown for Steelers Depot this morning on James Washington, looking at his struggles as a rookie, where obviously he caught 6 passes or whatever the number was to, I think, an underrated sophomore year. I don't think people are talking about how good Washington was or how improved Washington was in 2019. So I did a video breakdown just showing how he was better with his releases. The thing you always harp on, stacking quarterbacks, so important for vertical receivers like Washington, just how he just played at a faster, different level with more physicality, better hand use, better versus press coverage. So I don't know if you got a chance to see that video. I know I just posted it pretty recently, but just even if you haven't, just your thoughts on what allowed Washington to make a clear jump in year 2.
Yeah, I think just having more confidence in what he's doing overall and kind of knowing what he's seeing across from him and understanding the game and the speed of the game a little bit more. That's supposed to be the jump area with those wide receivers is that second and third year for sure. Is where you hope to see it in second. You definitely want to see it by year 3. Is he a complete player yet? No. And I think one of the things, too, to get excited about with him is that jump last season came without Ben Roethlisberger on the field. So we did see at the tail end of his rookie season some of the things that we had hoped to see with him. That we obviously didn't see in that first half of his rookie season there. So now let's see if he can pick up where he left off last season and do so with Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback there. Is he ever going to be the guy that just flat out runs past people? Probably not, but he is a guy. One of the things that we've joked about since really he was or commented on since he was drafted is, man, those such strong hands. The
lobster crackers.
Yeah, those lobster crackers for sure. And if that ball gets anywhere close to him, he's going to get it. But you go back and you look at. What was the touchdown that I think I posted it yesterday? The shorter touchdown from Mason Rudolph to Washington. Was that the game against the Rams? I think over there in the side of the end zone there. That's just a good example of how strong the hands that he has. You go back to that game against Cleveland and that ball that Devlin Hodges kind of threw up, and really when that ball was up in the air, I kind of thought it was going to get picked off. To be quite honest with you, and Washington managed to contort his body and essentially make kind of a contested catch in that situation there. So I think really the main thing with him moving forward, I would say, is, and this is one of the things that we've talked about with Chase Claypool as well too. Can he consistently stack guys on the outside and not necessarily run past them? I don't think we should expect him to really blow past guys unless there's a blown coverage or a slip or falls for the old sluggo or something like that. But can he at least get on top of them enough to make it where quarterbacks have a chance to complete something and drop it in the bucket? And we even saw that a time or two, I think, last season with Devlin Hodges. Devlin made a couple of nice throws down the sideline there, right into what we tend to call bucket throws, and Washington was able to grab onto those. So this is a big season for him, though, as well too. He's going to have to kind of fight off the competition, if you will, behind him, and set himself up to potentially for a contract year.
Yeah, I think he can stack receivers. I think that was the overall premise of the video, was showing the improvement, because he could not do that as a rookie, and that's why he was just so ineffective. That Browns game you mentioned, that catch that he made, I think is a perfect example of that, where he's got to run through press coverage, dip his inside shoulder, and stack the cornerback. And the reason why it was a spectacular catch, but the reason why that corner grabbed him was because that corner was trailing, and so he couldn't find the football. He was trying to get back in phase, and Washington was ahead of him, on top of him, and was able to find the football while the corner could not make a play on it. So I think that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, that this guy did show big improvement in year 2, and as you said, having been in year 3 should make him even better. So yeah, I think it started with conditioning. You hear anyone talk about Washington's improvement, it started with training camp, conditioning, being in great shape, and I think that opened the door for him to get better as a technician, a more physical player, and to win more often vertically.
Going back to remembering his college tape and all, obviously playing in that conference that he played in, he didn't see a lot of great man or press or
right.
or bail, kind of coverage. There was a lot of off coverage in there, and a lot of stuff where he would run down the middle of some zones and get open that way. And of course, Oklahoma State had a fairly loaded offensive lineup and a good scheme while he was there as well too. But I remember one of the things writing about right out of the chute was he was mostly a right-sided receiver, and he's now kind of put that behind him with several of those catches last year that he made on the opposite side of the offense there, the offense's left side. And, as you mentioned, be able to occasionally stack and get by some guys on top of it there. So now just needs to put all the tools that he has together, I think, in the same toolbox. And we'll see what kind of chances he gets. I still don't think he's going to be crushing it as far as total targets goes, but he is a guy that if he can catch 65 to 70% of his targets, which you got to figure most of his targets are going to be more than 12 yards or more than 15 yards down the field, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So those are considered deep ball targets, and anytime you can have a receiver come away with that, a receiver and quarterback come away with that with 65 or higher percentage completion, that means that player's become a deep pass threat. That's obviously something that the Steelers are hoping Chase Claypool can be as well too as he progresses there. But this is a perfect opportunity season to, I don't want to say sink or swim. I mean, I think he's already proven that he can swim, but how far can he swim?
Yeah, how many laps can he do?
Right. How many? There you go. How many laps can James Washington do in the pool? So I'm excited for him. This is a kid that I was pretty excited about coming out of Oklahoma State, who obviously there were a lot of those concerns during his rookie season there, and people say, well, can he really separate, and can he really go get to deep ball and all? And I think he turned a few heads last season. It was good for you to point all that out in that video, and it's well worth watching.
Another guy excited about, Zach Banner, showed a photo of himself on Twitter of his kind of quarantine transformation. I think there's two paths people take in quarantine. Either you get real swole or you get real fat. Like those are the two options people go during these couple of months indoors. And Banner's taken the right path, and he looks in great shape. And I posted a photo on Twitter of him in Cleveland back in 2017 when he was, I think, well over 400 pounds. And I don't think Banner said what his weight is right now, but it's somewhere much closer to 300 pounds. So pretty incredible transformation, and could not have come at a better time because this is a critical year for Banner's NFL career.
Absolutely. This is the kind of season that look, I think he's done enough at this point to maybe potentially stay around the league, another year or two at the very minimum. But I mean, is he an NFL starter now?
Mm-hmm. That $50 million tackle Tomlin talked about when they first signed him.
There you go. That's a good reference right there. Can he be that guy? If indeed Matt Filer is given the opportunity to kick inside, then they're going to need either him or Chukwuekorfor to assume that right tackle spot. And look, I mean, he's done some good things as a extra blocker on the end of the line of scrimmage there so far, but that's not everyday play or every down player. This is a big summer for him and a big season as well. He's obviously on a 1-year deal on top of that, and will he do enough to force the Steelers' hands into re-signing him, or will he do enough that he can parlay it into a starting tackle contract elsewhere in the league? So he's got a lot to play for this year, and it'll be exciting to see if he can indeed, either him or Chukwuekorfor can take that next step. They need one of those guys really to step up this year.
Yep,
if not both.
Yeah, big years for both guys, no doubt about it. And with Banner, I made this point before, and I know that we talk about the silly stuff with Banner, whether that's him with talking with Doc Hodges on Twitter, or the whole 72 reporting eligible, or the kneel down blockers, whatever. Banner's just a great story. This guy came very close to falling out of football. Like he was, a 4th-round pick of the Colts, fell out of favor there pretty quickly. He was with Cleveland briefly, didn't work out. He's on the street. I mean, he didn't get signed till he was a mid-camp ad in Pittsburgh in 2018. So they didn't carry him through the offseason. He just got brought in because I think injuries along the offensive line. He was working on getting his weight down. He continued to get his weight down in Pittsburgh, climbed the ladder. So kudos to him. That's a path that a lot of players should follow, that you can be down, but you're not out. And I think that's the mentality Banner has certainly approached things with.
And look, with all the things that look, nobody knew who he was really when the Steelers brought him in a couple of years ago there, and Oh, great! Just another draft bust. This guy probably not going to last too long and all. Obviously, turned around his conditioning and really became a cult hero of sorts with that whole reporting eligible thing. I do think to some degree, look, everybody knows who. I would think most everybody in Pittsburgh, a fan for the most part, should know who he is by now on sight. Yeah. I think face and name and all the recognition that he's got with the old reporting eligible thing should make him recognizable, and that's great. I mean, to be a recognizable player in the NFL, especially a lineman and a backup one at that. He can't continue to live in that world, however, though he can't rest on those laurels of, oh man, I think the franchise really likes me and the fans like me and I'm noticeable and all like this. Now he's got to go out there and become a recognizable starting offensive lineman in the league there. So if I were him, some of these guys that kind of that borderline, I don't want to say maybe I do want to say celebrity, if you will. They're not there yet, and the paycheck's not matching that yet. And
right.
A lot of times you kind of wish those guys would kind of tone it down, to some degree there. But regardless, it's a big year for him, and I'm rooting for him and Chukwuekorfor on top of it. There, interesting to see if they can, as you kind of write, the next step to take. Or one step to what's the name of the series that you do on that?
One step to take.
One step to take. There, be interested to see if he can indeed take that next one step.
Yeah, he's come a long way, but there's still a long ways to go. He was signed on August 12th, 2018, and that was to replace Kyle Meadows, who was waived injured. So, again, it was a guy that really no expectation coming in, and he certainly had staying power, and that's thanks to his hard work and dedication for transforming his body, getting his weight down, and giving himself a chance to show the talent that he has. Dave, you wrote it was with NFL.
We're convinced he's not going to be a guard, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, are people still even talking about
I hope not.
Guard?
Not. Who was it? Bouchette or who was?
Well, Bouchette was talking about Okorafor moving to guard.
There was somebody else I thought that was talking about Banner moving to guard.
Yeah, somebody probably did. He's
know.
not in that conference. I mean, I guess he could in theory, but there's just no expectation for that to happen. He's never played guard before. All right, Dave, switching gears here. Let's see, who was this? This was Michael Robinson on Good Morning Football. Had some questions about Ben, circling back to him, and I'll let you take it away because I didn't even listen to the interview because it just seemed kind of silly based on everything that you wrote, and I agree with your assessment here, but you take this to the
Yeah, look, I mean, I understand why they are, this time of year it's hard to find stuff to talk or write about, and, overall, it's a tough task for networks and especially for shows that, day in, day out or a couple hours long there. But, they were talking yesterday, I guess it was, about should the Steelers be considered contenders in the AFC in 2020. And you would think really that's kind of a simple question and not one player specific, so to speak there. But I thought for the most part, three of the analysts on that show did a decent job, at least answering the question. And when it got to former NFLer Michael Robinson, boy, he really went down the Ben Roethlisberger rabbit hole, if you will. And at first he started with kind of a praising of Roethlisberger, saying, I mean, when you talk about a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, he definitely has the pedigree, he definitely has the experience. And when you lose a guy like that, obviously talk about last year, your season can be derailed. And then he, why not just go? And then he started going the right direction from there and talking about the Steelers' defense, showing last year with the league-leading 54 sacks and 38 takeaways that the defense is there. And then I thought he was going to just, another couple sentences or two of talking about, I think this team, with Roethlisberger back can be contenders in 2020. Well, he went an entirely different direction there. He says, but my issue is with the Steelers and specifically Ben Roethlisberger. Ever since they won the Super Bowls in 2006 and 2009, those Super Bowl teams were kind of led by a great run game and stingy defense. Ben Roethlisberger, I'm not saying that he didn't make any plays, but he kind of just had to manage things and not mess things up. up. I guess he fell asleep for the final drive of that of the Super Bowl against the Cardinals there. He goes on to say, ever since we've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers team having to lean on Ben Roethlisberger's arm to win games consistently, it just hasn't happened. I guess he missed a couple of them 500-yard performances as well, too, there a couple seasons ago. After talking about Roethlisberger's past successful seasons effectively being a result of him being a game manager, Robinson went on to really light into Ben and his leadership abilities. In so many words here, he went on to continue to blame Antonio Brown being out of Pittsburgh on Ben Roethlisberger, and then he goes on to say, here's the money shot. You may still have Le'Veon Bell, one of the top running backs in the National Football League. You may have those guys still there. So of course the addition of Ben Roethlisberger makes this Pittsburgh Steelers team legit, and he goes on to praise Mike Tomlin and all. But last I checked, Antonio Brown has still played just one game with a team other than the Steelers. Last time I checked, Le'Veon Bell didn't like the contract offers that the Steelers gave him over a course of 2 seasons, and the final of those 2 seasons, he just decided not to sign the franchise tag and not play at all. He might have said a few things about Ben Roethlisberger upon his exit from Pittsburgh, via free agency and all, but let's not blame Le'Veon Bell's exit from Pittsburgh on Ben Roethlisberger. And okay, we still don't know completely what all went down. We think we know. We maybe a ball was tossed at Antonio Brown during a practice late in the 2000 and what season was it?
19?
No,
or 18.
18 season there. Ahead of the season finale against the Bengals that caused AB to go off and all like that. Even if AB blew up just because of Ben getting pissed at him, if you will, put your pants back on that you got mad in and get over it. AB no longer being in Pittsburgh is because of AB. It's not because of Ben Roethlisberger. Let's just be clear on that. So really, I think Robinson, I don't know why he chose to go down some of these holes that he went down. But, and look, did Ben Roethlisberger have a great XL Super Bowl? No. But I think he forgets how good of kind of playoffs, how good Ben was. Look, we're not talking 400-yard games in the playoffs leading up to Super Bowl XL, but Ben Roethlisberger was a very productive passing quarterback during those 3 games leading up to the Super Bowl there. And then, he has won some games with his arm since then, and that includes the second Super Bowl win against the Cardinals as well too. So I was in kind of a one of those moods, which for me is probably every other day mood, but I figured that was worthy of calling out.
Yeah, just contrarian it felt like there from Robinson. Someone had to take the other side, I guess. Maybe that's his real thoughts. I'm not sure. I think back to 2005 and that Denver game, AFC title game. They came out throwing, and that's why they were so effective early, jumped on the Broncos early because everyone thought they were going to run the ball, and they came out with a totally different approach, what Ben finds. Was it Hines Ward on that opening drive for a touchdown, I think?
I believe so. Was that the guns? Was that him coming out and giving the guns?
Yeah. I think that was the old finger gun,
after
Ben.
that, I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank real quick.
But anyway, they came out throwing that game when they came out aggressive and got on Denver and took them to the Super Bowl where they eventually won. So and this is just a weird comment there. I feel like someone just had to be playing the other side of the coin there, and Robinson was tasked with that. So stuff that's always probably going to follow a bit. There's always been that narrative about leadership and all those things, but. I think anyone who's watched him seriously knows that those comments are very much off base.
I guess we're going to start getting the narrative now that he's got chicken legs and he needs to gain some weight, right?
I guess so. No, he looks good though.
He looks good. He really does look good, and obviously you can't from some of these shots and all. But I mean, look, even from that man up conference that he was in, we got video of that and yesterday as well too. And
not sure about the haircut though. I'm not sure on the
Yeah,
haircut.
he looks. That's a dad. He's got dad. He's got the dad look going. You know.
He does. Yeah.
It's still funny. I've got that kind of that meme I created floating around there from earlier this offseason after the draft. It's got the pictures of the other quarterbacks in the AFC North. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and now Joe Burrow. All of them with their accepting their Heismans and all like that. And then in the bottom corner, I have the Ben Roethlisberger quarantine bearded PSA head shot with him in there, and that these are your AFC North quarterbacks for 2020 there. And look, Lamar Jackson had a fantastic season. In 2019, and I don't want to take anything away from that because Jackson did do a lot of good things, not only with his legs, but and I thought the offensive coordinator did a great job, making sure that Jackson could have some easy reads to exploit defenses that were so concerned about his legs and all like that. I want to see Jackson do that again, though. I want to see now that defenses have a good idea of what's going on with Lamar Jackson 2 years into his career. I want to see Lamar Jackson come out and blister the league again, not only with his feet but with his arm. Until he does that, I'm withholding judgment. Really, to be honest with you, I think Ben Roethlisberger, even year in year out, is constantly asked about these second year phenoms, if you will. And then one of his responses is, let's see how he does, and then now that defensive coordinators have seen, gotten a good look at it all. And I put me in that classification right now. I'm not saying that Jackson won't be that guy, but I want to see it another full season now. And until then, I think even though Ben, obviously missed most of last season there, and obviously Ben's got a lot to prove now, but Ben has done it time in and time out, throughout his career. So until otherwise notice, I still consider Ben the king of the AFC North.
Mm-hmm. Of all the quarterbacks in the AFC North, only one has a playoff win, much less Super Bowl victories, and that is Ben. So we'll see. By the way, just real quick, this is from Jets camp, Rich Samini, and this is just mostly irrelevant, but he says, quote, if the Jets are out of contention by midseason, they probably will look to shop Bell at the trading deadline. So get ready for Bell to Pittsburgh comments around the trade deadline, I'm betting.
Yeah, the whole thing is, though, what's going to be left on this contract at that time, and can the Steelers afford it? And the answer is probably going to be no,
Yeah, but remember, if you believe the report, the Steelers at least touched base with the Jets last year, whatever that's worth.
I don't know if I believe that, but I know it's out there, and it's hard for me to say without a shadow of a doubt that it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Colbert clarified and said that basically he just calls almost every team around trade deadline and just sees who's available to let Tomlin know, let everyone know just who is available, and that may be the extent of things. But another year, who knows? Probably not going to happen. I'm just throwing that out there. I just came across it on Twitter right now.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't. Go make any huge bets on that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dave. Let's switch to the tight end position. We've been doing our positional overview for camp / preseason. We've done running backs, we've done quarterbacks, and we'll do tight ends today. And starting with the top two, the only two guys who are locked into a roster spot right now, that is, of course, Vance McDonald and Eric Ebron. Two talented guys, two guys that are certainly can be weapons in the pass game, in the red zone, but two guys who have some durability, overall health concerns. So big years for both those men.
Yeah, boy, what was the conversation a year ago when we were reviewing the tight ends? Boy, Vance McDonald was coming off of a not too shabby season, right? And we were talking about would Xavier Grimble be able to take the next step? Then they got the rookie in Gentry, who we didn't think would probably play all that much, and obviously did not. Fast forward through the first couple weeks of the season, McDonald gets dinged up, and Grimble out the door not too long after that. We did unfortunately see Gentry have to play some meaningful snaps earlier rather than later. You go back to that guy, it just sticks in your head. What did he play? 2 snaps against the 49ers?
Gentry?
Gentry. And
maybe a little more than that, but a couple snaps.
Brutal.
Yeah, not good.
Brutal snaps there. Now, obviously, for whatever it's worth, I mean, I think he played, 50 snaps in total or something during his rookie season. There was some progression there, a little bit, but nothing to hang your hat on there. So in comes Ebron, back comes McDonald on a slightly reworked contract there. McDonald, not the blocker that, look, he never was known, I don't think, as one of the league's top blocking tight ends, but I can specifically remember writing and doing some posts about, I think, his first season with the Steelers, seeing some good things on tape from him in a blocking category. Really haven't seen much of that since, and obviously with the injury concerns, he's no Heath Miller, let's just put it that way, when it comes to the blocking department there. And Eric Ebron is not Heath Miller minus
minus Vance McDonald.
Yeah, minus a Vance McDonald blocking ability in that equation. Now, obviously, you did not bring in Eric Ebron to run a lot of 2 tight end running play sets there, and I kind of cringe. And I've mentioned this quite a bit, I kind of worry about seeing potentially a lot of that because I'm not positive about what the outcome might be if you have both those guys on the field. But you obviously brought that guy in because of what he can do detached from the line, what he can do in the red zone. You go back to just a couple years ago with him playing with Andrew Luck with the Colts and just how fantastic he was in the red zone area. That's where this biggest asset is. You do kind of worry about the hands, though. It seems like his drops come in bunches too. In a couple of games there as well too. But overall, I understand it, and really, I think I think we feel comfortable in who McDonald and Ebron are this year. I'm most interested in potentially the guy that we're probably not going to talk a lot about for the remainder of the offseason. That's Zach Gentry. Can he progress into the next Jessie James, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've talked about Vance and Ebron plenty, that if both can play 500 snaps and that limits their snap count, it helps reduce and mitigate the risk of injury, and it's probably just a good way to keep both those guys fresh. With Gentry, sure, as a blocker, it's kind of that was the biggest area he had to work on when he got drafted. Tight ends coach James Daniel admitted as much. He was a former quarterback, a receiver in his early days at Michigan, and really hadn't developed much as a blocker. And so, but with his frame at 6'8", 240, 250, whatever he's listed at, he's going to have to be an accomplished blocker, and so hopefully year 2 for him will improve that, and that's typical. Usually those year 1 guys, tight ends, across the board are terrible as blockers. You see on the sleds, they struggle. They're much different people come year 2. So big challenge there for Gentry to really secure that spot. If he can be a good blocker and a limited red zone threat, if someone gets hurt, then that's a good 2020 for Zach Gentry.
We had a lot of those same questions about Jessie James. Now, Jessie obviously never became, and I don't think either of us expected Jessie James to become Matt Spaeth, but he did make he did develop. From the time he came out of and look, I mean, he was an underclassman too, right?
Mm-hmm, he was. Yep. Coming out.
And Kevin Colbert's notorious for saying, these guys, their rookie seasons are essentially their senior seasons in college, and they got to get stronger and got to learn the nuances of the game a little bit more. And really, Gentry more so than Jessie James, because of him, showing up originally as that's a one big quarterback, right there, right? But I mean, I'm slightly optimistic that he might be able to take that next step. It's unfortunate, however, as I'd like to say, boy, if there's one guy that you wish could have had these OTAs and mandatory minicamp, it's probably him, right?
Well, I don't know if he's the one guy for
Well,
me, but he's certainly one of. Yeah,
one
he's,
of
he's
20.
affected.
You know?
Yeah, he's affected by it by a second year guy that will help, that will stunt that second year development, because that would have been huge for him to have that offseason program.
Right. I mean, you want him on that sled. You want him, just going through the reps and the muscle memory and the things associated with that. Now, I'm kind of drawing a blank of the progression that Jessie James made from rookie to second season. I tend to remember his big progression, I think, coming more so late second season on into third. Am I wrong there?
I don't remember. The timelines kind of become muddied. I can try to look up my old camp recaps, though. That his second year would have been 2016. That was his second season in the league, correct? 2015 he got drafted.
Last year would have been his fifth, right?
Because I guess because 4 years and then fifth year out, not on that rookie deal. I'd have to look. I'm not sure I'll be able to find it. But yeah, there was continual progression. I think first to second year, second to third year. I don't know which one was the biggest amount of progression, but there was still progression, and nonetheless, the best thing for Jessie for me was that he was durable. I mean, this dude missed one practice in his entire Steelers career. One practice, and that was a personal reason. That wasn't even for injury. So this guy was tough. He was durable, and he played her. I remember Todd Haley talking about some of the injuries that guy played through. So it's a different tight end room when you have McDonald and Ebron, who have very much missed plenty of time with injuries.
And I think, too, one of the things that jumps out about my memory about Jessie James, especially in his final season, is he learned how to play bin ball.
Yeah.
He learned how to get himself open on extended plays and made a couple of big plays, explosive plays at that, if memory serves me, in his last season with the Steelers there. And obviously going to be known for that for that non-touchdown against the Patriots and all like that, which I think that was just a great play on his part. It's just sad that the rule called for the ruling that happened in that game and all like that. But I guess what I'm getting at, and kind of going to today's group, the depth chart there, I think not having the off season here is going to hurt the guys that are behind Gentry from stating a good case here. And I guess in so many words, I think an upside or potential for Gentry in his second season is maybe be that guy that helps keep McDonald and Ebron off the field in some of those two, and Banner or whoever your extra eligible guy is in a lot of those situations there. So, can Gentry be a guy that gives you 200 to 250 snaps? Is that asking too much out of him? And can a large selection of those, let's say 200 snaps, be productive for him, especially in the running game?
Yeah, we'll see. That's going to be the challenge just across the board, is putting all those guys in positions to win, especially in Eric Ebron. So I assume, though, you feel better about this tight end group this year compared to last, entering the year.
Look, I think Gentry can't help but be a better player than he was last year. If he's as bad as he was last year, then that's not going to last too terribly long there. So let's go ahead and call him an upgrade over his rookie self.
Yep.
McDonald. Oh, McDonald is McDonald. E-I-E-I-O. Basically that, you should get what you've had out of him, and hopefully just he stays healthy. And it's been one of the main concerns with him since he's arrived, right? I mean, if he stays healthy, Ben likes him. We've seen what he can do in the passing game. People continue to say, man, the Steelers have had no production under Randy Fichtner from their tight ends. That's not true. How quickly people forget the 2018 season, right?
Right. Jessie and Vance combined for almost 100 catches, I think, for, probably close to 1,000 yards, and I'm not even sure how many touchdowns, 10 touchdowns.
So if this team can have the 2018 version of McDonald, or even slightly less, I'm good with that. And then really the difference is Eric Ebron an upgrade over Xavier Grimble? And
safely, yes.
Safely, yes, indeed. So, Yeah, I think they are in a better position tight end depth chart wise than they were exactly 1 year ago.
Mm-hmm. But there is risk too, because let's say just one of those top two guys goes down, and it's unlikely that all will play or both will play all 16 games this season. Then if Eric Ebron's your number one tight end and he's got to do those inline type things, that's going to be a problem. It advances your every down tight end. And that was a problem the way it was last year, where Vance probably was just overtaxed and played more than what was best for him. And so that is a concern. Is that it looks good now. How good will it look in week 5 or week 6?
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's cute, all the tackle eligible and Zach Banner coming onto the field and all like that. But I've had enough of it, Alex. I think they're still going to keep using it because
for the issues that Ebron has as a run blocker.
It limits you so much. And there are certain situations where obviously it's good to have that goal to go situations or deep in the red zone or short yardage or but I mean, do you really want to keep doing that, and especially keep having to occasionally pass out of it as well too? You're really, really limiting yourself. You're really kind of you're essentially giving, in my opinion, the defense an extra guy on the field when you do that, especially if you're trying to pass out of it and all. I've seen enough of it. Look, they're going to use it. There are going to be instances where they have to use it. Like I said, I just don't want to see it on the amounts that they've done in the past couple years.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. With the other tight ends, we've talked about the top 3. You got Christian Scotland-Williamson, who we both believe is no longer part of the International Pathway Program, so he's got to make his roster spot like any other player. And I wrote about him the other day that I just want to see something as a receiver inside stadiums. Through 2 years, he's got 1 catch for 5 yards in the preseason. And obviously, what he can do as a blocker is probably still first and foremost because he's got the size, and that's the whole idea. But I want to see him show he belongs and can make some plays as a receiver as well, just to kind of show that he's taken big strides to hopefully even not necessarily make the 53, but get on the practice squad again.
Obviously a guy that you root for, right? I mean, man, just to hear him talk and just a good all-around human being.
Absolutely.
And obviously with his path and all like that, you can't help but root for this guy. He definitely has the size and the attributes and all that you think would make a nice tight end. He's just got to finally be able to put it all together. And unfortunately for someone like me who's not at training camp, all I get to see is the handful of plays that he plays during the preseason. And people say, why are you so down on Christian Scotland-Williamson? I just don't have, there's been nothing on the limited amount of tape that I've seen so far from him from preseason that allows me to even remotely consider him as a 53-man roster guy. Now, could that obviously change this offseason? Yeah, I mean, look, you're one injury away from next man up, and he could potentially be that next man up, right? I mean, him or Kevin Rader. And what has Rader really shown you?
Yeah, potentially. Rader, I think they like a lot, though. They kicked around. I think he's one of the better backup blockers right now out of Youngstown State. So I think they could like him just for that blocking ability. That's why Scotty doesn't have to do well as a blocker, but sure something as a receiver, too. He has an interesting frame. He took steps last year, Scotty did, but he's got to take more steps, obviously, because there is no exemption this year. There is no, we'll carry you as the 11th guy, and you're just getting reps. Now you're just a regular player. I mean, there's no special exemption for you, so you're going to have to really earn your keep.
And you want to talk about a guy that's going to, a couple of guys that are going to probably get a few reps during camp are going to be, Scotty and Rader. And look, you look at this depth chart to top to bottom here. There's not many names on it, so that means you are one Vance McDonald sore toe, one Eric Ebron. I need a day off to rest my surgically repaired ankle away from a roster move or two.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is going to be a fluent, I think, position group. Knock on, look, we all hope that all these guys stay healthy here, but the realistic and our side of this thing and our experience in covering this thing and looking at short position group lines goes, we're probably going to see a roster move or 2 or 3 at tight end as the summer progresses.
And they're going to need all these reps because, unfortunately, like you've said, reps are probably going to be limited, whether that's cutting preseason games, camp, whatever happens there. These guys need to stay healthy, stay in good shape, avoid any soft tissue injuries, and be available as much as possible because they need every single rep they can get.
A real good chance for Zach Gentry to get, hopefully make up for not that time that he missed, during the offseason here. You would have to think that they, look, they know who Vance McDonald is. They probably got a good idea of what Ebron can't do now. So, going to be a good opportunity, I think, to for a guy like Gentry to get some camp time there. Look, I mean, I think is Xavier Grimble still running around out there unsigned too?
He was with Indy, wasn't he? I don't know if he's still with them or with any other team.
I can't remember, but you're probably not too far. I don't know how they ended terms with him, but
he signed a futures deal with the Colts at the end of the season.
Okay, so he is with the Colts then. Okay.
Yep. Still with the Colts.
You're not too far off from having a guy with a fringe guy be on your depth chart here.
I'm still eyeing some sort of reunion with Jessie James. Probably not this year because of contract stuff, but sometime down the road, I would be open to that. But anything else with the tight end group you wanted to add, Dave? I think we hit on all the guys there.
Don't expect Derek Watt to a lot of people see him and view him maybe as a fullback / kind of tight end, and that's just not who he is. Now, can he give you some stuff, some H-back stuff where he's just off the line of scrimmage and on the move that way? Yeah, but I mean, you're not going to anchor him to the line of scrimmage, on anything other than an emergency there.
I'm with you. And no emails about Jalen Samuels, please, and thank you. All right, Dave. Anything else we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about today, or we can jump into some reader emails?
How do you feel about that group right now? You're with me that from a year ago, it at least on paper seems better, right?
It is, for sure. I don't think there's any arguing that, but there's just risk reward because I can see this thing go sideways pretty quickly where if Ebron, if there's durability concerns and one of those guys has to shoulder the load and that's not the expectation of how those guys are going to win, that could really put this team in a bind. So I think it looks good right now, but like I said, talk to me week 6. Let me know what the health of those guys are. And if someone can't stay healthy, then there could be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, they just don't make the Heath Millers anymore.
Hey, true that. And so, you have to find more specialty type guys. And again, I will harp on it for the last time of 2020. Go invest in a tight end in the draft so you're not going through this Rolodex of just new tight end year after year. Get yourself into trouble. I think the team has felt that over the past few seasons.
Okay, let's see here.
I think we're reader emails. I don't think
all right. Nicholas writes in your favorite type of question, a hypothetical, but please just entertain this idea as I know it's not realistic. What would a middle linebacking pair of Shazier and Bush look like? Would they work together? What would they excel at? What would be the difficulties? Just riff on the idea if you could. I missed if you talked about this already, so my apologies if that's the case. Thanks for everything. This is the only Steeler podcast website I bother with. Thanks for that, Nicholas here. All right, indulge Nicholas here.
I mean, it'd be one of the best duos in football, maybe the best duo of inside linebackers in the NFL. They would be able to run, cover, blitz, sideline to sideline. I mean, the weaknesses would be few. I guess you could, in theory, say maybe the run defense wouldn't be the greatest, but Shazier certainly improved by leaps and bounds as a run defender once he got used to using his hands to work off blocks as opposed to trying to run around blocks. I think Bush will have similar progression and maybe even a little further ahead run defense than where Shazier was as a rookie. So it'd be a dynamic duo and a great pair to have.
Boy, I just go back to Shazier, be able to kind of that quickness and just be able to split some gaps that either he wasn't supposed to be in or B was supposed to be in, and just beat the guys, beat offensive linemen, into the backfield there. That's one thing that I'll always remember him about there too. Also, I'll kind of always remember that game against San Francisco. What did he have in that game? Like 84 tackles or something like that. I mean, This was obviously, 4 full years ago, right? But wasn't that the game that he effectively, was it McDonald that he tossed aside in that game? Do you remember?
I do not remember.
But, he had a great game in that. And really kind of, I think, one of his signature games, if you will, there. And, boy, the leaping ability and the ability to make, some of those, interceptions and running the route I'll never forget him kind of running the route for Ben Watson one time, right? In the game, I think against the Ravens and picking off a pass there. I guess when I think about the potential of Bush and Shazier playing together, and I guess it's fathomable or plausible that even had Shazier stayed healthy a couple of years ago, he would obviously been on a more expensive contract. Would you have still been able to invest a draft pick in a guy like Bush?
Yeah, probably not. You probably wouldn't have been aggressive in trading up for Devin Bush. Maybe if he would have fell to you, but that probably wouldn't have happened.
Right. I'm not so sure that you move up to get him. But, obviously if he would have fell in your laps, he would have been a guy that they would have liked. I can't help but keep going back to the realistic end of it. If you would have had this guy, would it have allowed you to get this guy? But yeah, Nicholas, look, it is kind of one of those what if things that you wonder about there. And I'm with Alex there. I think maybe because of their physique and all like that, you kind of wonder about how they both would have fared in games with big, ugly guards on them, along with a fullback or something. You know?
But I still think they would have been fine. I think they would have been able to make it work.
Right. As a whole, I think they would have been fine. But okay, interesting question there. We indulged Nicholas there. Let's see, what else do we have here? If we got Jim Bendis here, best Steelers wide receiver. Hey guys, my friend and I were discussing the Steelers players coaches who would make the Mount Rushmore of Steelers based on the criteria, forced the opposing team to play differently because of them. We agreed on the first four, but not the fifth. We had a small debate over what wide receivers should be the fifth face. I voted for AB despite being a locker room distraction. He was able to get the game-winning catch while being surrounded in a phone booth countless times to win the must-win games. That no one was able to cover him when it mattered most. My buddy said it would be Swan or Stallworth because they are much better receivers overall. Had to play in today's NFL, their stats would be better than AB. Dave, after looking at all the big receiving plays, what do you think and why? Swan, Stallworth, or AB? And if you are curious, the four faces that we agreed on were Noel, Mean Joe, Lambert, and Troy. I just tell you, look, I mean, Swan and Stallworth were great in their time. For the era that they played in. But if you want to talk about, and look, would Swan and Stallworth in today's game and training and advancements and all like that have been the same? I guess that's the question, Alex. Would AB or Stallworth have been, would Swan or Stallworth have been AB level had they come along, at the same time as AB? I guess that's where we should start with this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole era debate that's so difficult to try to project. We'd be playing in a much different, much more prolific passing offense today. I mean, heck, in those early 70s, even the mid-70s, they didn't throw the football. They were just such a run-heavy team. They didn't start opening things up until the late 70s. I think from a just pure talent standpoint, if that's the way you want to evaluate your Mount Rushmore, it has to be AB, even trying to compensate for the era question. But if you're doing a Mount Rushmore, these are the faces of your franchise. And as good as AB is on the field, there's no denying that. Do you want to put him as one of your faces of the franchise? And in that view of a Mount Rushmore, I don't know if I would. I think I would go with either Swan or Stallworth.
Yeah, if we're taking into account attitude and locker room and all the other stuff that's gone on with AB. Yeah, I'm not sure I want that face up on Mount Rushmore, but just for receiver ability, I'm not convinced that Swan and Stallworth, and look, I'm as old school as they come, I'm not convinced Swan and Stallworth would have been an AB in today's game. And And also, what would AB have been able to do back in the 70s, in the late 70s, early 80s as well too, would be interesting there. It's just one of those error questions that, so much has changed with the training and the game and all. It's really impossible to kind of answer, but in the parameters that you've given me, I'm kind of with Alex here. I think it would be AB.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have it from a talent standpoint. I'd go AB. But if I'm doing a Mount Rushmore, AB would probably not be on that list, because if you hypothetically had that, first of all, if I'm carving AB's face into a mountain, he does not need the ego anymore. But whenever you would look at that, you would think about AB off the field maybe more quickly than you would on the field, or at least conjunction with on the field stuff. And so, do you want AB's face next to Troy and Noel, who exemplified what it meant to be a Steeler on and off the field? No, I wouldn't. So I would go with either a different position, different person entirely. Hines Ward. I'm sure there'll be some fan style, maybe put Hines Ward on there. But I would not have AB on Mount Rushmore just because of him being a literal face of the franchise. I don't think he showed that.
Fair enough. All right. Devin Beerley writes in from Williamsport, PA. Hey, guys, thanks for all you do. I was wondering this a few weeks ago. Why does Ben Roethlisberger seem to get so much hate from the media? I understand he has some not so great things in his past, but he has seemed to turn into a great person and teammate. Guys like Michael Vick, Ray Lewis, and even Kobe Bryant all had shaky and maybe even worse past than Ben, but all seem to be forgiven and have all earned great respect. I just wonder why Ben doesn't really earn any respect, especially from the national media. A lot of times when I get asked and see kind of some of this stuff about Ben and all too, I always try to take a step back and look around and say, what do fans of other teams see, and how do they view maybe their star quarterback treated and written about in the media if they're not named Tom Brady or Drew Brees, I guess. And really, even Brees has really obviously come under fire recently there for some things that he's said. But why does Ben get it a little bit more unfairly? Has Ben had trouble gaining the respect more so than maybe any other of the top 10 quarterbacks over the course of the last decade?
I would say to some extent, as you said, what do they say about other quarterbacks? We don't pay attention to that as closely as we do anything Ben related. I think partially just because Ben isn't that mold of the traditional quarterback like a Brady, like a Manning, like a Drew Brees, for example. And so when you're kind of outside those lines from the conventional and the status quo, then you're open to a little more criticism. But I can't answer that completely because I'm not the national media, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that stuff. I think some of the things you said about his past is an element of that, but I think he just doesn't fit the norm of a traditional elite talent quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback, and that's why he gets more criticism.
Yeah, that's probably why. I mean, look, I think some of the things that Michael Robinson, that I wrote about yesterday, I think some of the things that he said was just kind of, sometimes he's an easy target too, and a lot of times too, look, sometimes the way Ben responds to some things in the past has, some of that Ben passive aggressiveness, if you will, right?
Yeah, he can be prickly with the media. Even today, he's better today. But if he's mad at you, he will let you know about it when he's talking to you in a media scrum, for example.
Right, absolutely. So that obviously is going to get some sort of reply. I think he's never going to be a media darling, so to speak. But that's probably why. Look, I mean, he's got a great chance to really quiet a lot of people on his way out the door here, in the next couple of years here. I mean, look, I think it's smart money to put on him to be potentially the NFL's comeback player of the year this year.
Yeah, I think it'll be either him or Gronk, barring something unforeseen.
Let's see here. Zach Stevens writes in, Dave, read on Twitter that the Steelers are returning 82.4% of the snaps from 2019. Is that stat available for past years? If so, where does this rank relative to the last decade of Steelers teams? Zach, he says, keep up the great work. You and Alex and the rest of the Depot crew continue to provide, in my opinion, the most accurate, honest, and entertaining coverage of the team. Thank you very much for that, Zach. Zach lives in Maryland, so he's in Raven country there, or Redskins country 1. All right. Yeah, look, I mean, you can go back and look at some of the stats on Pro Football Reference as far as how this stacks up this year to previous years. I think I don't have that exact data in front of me here, but just the feel of it overall. When you look at, you have 12 of 15, or what is it? What's the stat? 13 of 15, or
13 of 15. Lost Barron and Harvey.
Right, 13 of 15 defensive players who played, I think, 250 or more snaps last year are back on this defense, and and then you look at the offensive side of football, and you got guys that didn't that probably still met that threshold but were injured. Guys like Juju and Connor. I would dare say that the returning snaps this year probably far exceeds anything we've probably seen since maybe, and I'm just guessing here, 2011.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's up there, and for the first time in a long time, the number's been so high. I don't have the data right now, but I tend to agree with you, Dave.
I mean, because generally, year in, year out, you have. And look, you're going to have the turnover anyway in this year's roster. You're going to have the turnover as well at probably a good third. A good quarter of the bottom of the roster, maybe even as much as a third there. I mean, look, you could just rattle off the names already that are not going to be back, right? Barron and Hargrave and Matakevich, even though he's no defensive snaps there to really speak of.
Mm-hmm.
Chicolo, is that really a loss? Is that really a loss? I mean, it is from a special teams aspect, I think, but hopefully they've kind of filled that with guys like Watt and some of these and Roosevelt Nix. I mean, look, he didn't play a lot of snaps last year, but special teams aspect, and in previous years he would play a decent amount of snaps overall, I think. But it just has a feel. I don't know. Maybe that's something I could get on Zach in the next couple of weeks. Is where does the returning snaps this year percentage compare to previous years? Maybe that'll be a good post for one of us to get on there. But just on the surface, it feels like maybe 2011, and that of course was the year that the lockout played a role. And I think in the grand scheme of things, that kind of played in the Steelers' favor as the season wore on, because they had a more experienced team returning, and they did miss a good bunch of the offseason there.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've talked about that element before, and I think that element's going to play a similar role, at least in 2020.
Let's see here if we have anything else. Tuesday show from Nick Napak. Thanks for the show, especially right now. It gives me the small football fix I need. My question is how good really – here's a Heath Miller question for you. How good really was Heath Miller? Him being on the all-decade team made me think about it. Obviously, he was a good tight end, but if my memory serves me right, he was always underappreciated by the national media. Only 12 weeks until week 1. Nick, here's the thing, Nick, with him, he played at the same time as Jason Witten, and obviously Jason Witten's still playing. So he kind of always seemed to get overshadowed by Jason Witten as far as in that all-around tight end category there. And make no mistake, Jason Witten is was one fine tight end during his time. The thing is, was Heath Miller kind of underappreciated? I think to some degree, but I think there's a large selection. If you ask who were some of the better all-around tight ends in the league during those whatever seasons that Heath Miller played in, Heath Miller would I would hope be one of the 2 or 3 names that comes up. And what did make him so good? How good really was Heath Miller, Alex?
I mean, he was great. I don't think there's enough good things you can say about Heath Miller. The consistency, durability, dependability, what he did as a blocker, as a receiver. The guy still made plays. I think we don't talk about that enough, what he did as a receiver. He was better than what some people think, but he wasn't the flashy, Gronk type of guy, the new age tight end that was coming into vogue at the towards the end, the back half of Miller's career. So that's one reason why he doesn't get talked about as much as some of those flashier, more vertical, athletic tight ends. So that's the thing that dinged him. But I mean, Heath Miller was, I mean, just will go down in history as as right now the best Steelers tight end they've ever had.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the game's obviously has changed some too, right? Quite a bit. And that's a result of the college game changing as well too. You just don't see these guys that are attached to the line, asked to run block half the plays, and then asked to contribute in the passing game the other half there. So what would Heath Miller be considered in today's NFL? I mean, obviously you'd like to have him, but
yeah, I think there'd still be a role, and you can look at a George Kittle. There's still a role for that type of guy that can do both. It's just harder and harder to find those guys. In some ways, it would make them more valuable because those guys are just very far and few between.
Right, and would the advancements in training and all have made Heath Miller was a good blocker, a very good blocker during his heyday, starting I guess about year 3 on for several seasons there. Probably one of the league's best starting, along with Jason Witten, one of the league's best starting blocking tight ends. Was he ever George Kittle like in throwing people out of the club? Probably not, but he was damn effective.
Yeah, and that's all that matters. You get the job done however you got to do it. Yeah, he's not in that Kittle even as a receiver necessarily, but again, better receiver than what some people think. But again, just for me, for Heath Miller, regardless of what national media says, he is the best tight end in Steelers history. He surpassed LB Nickel, and I think he'll hold that number 1 spot for quite some time.
Will he ever be Hall of Fame?
No, that's the one thing where I don't think it's going to happen because, especially in this era of how we think about tight ends, they are got to be, have to be big receivers. Essentially, I don't think Miller's ever going to get the can, but it'll be in the Steelers, Ring of Honor for sure, no question about that, and deservedly so. Yeah,
I'm afraid he's going to be in that realm where he kind of gets skipped over. I mean, he was damn good. He Ring of Honor for the Steelers at some point, absolutely, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he may get on some, early list for Canton, but I don't think he'll ever get serious consideration for the Hall of Fame.
Right. He might be, semi...
top 100, like that initial list that's 100
right,
comes out.
Right, but once it gets whittled down, I think, unfortunately, he would be a hard push unless you ever got to a time where there was kind of a huge lull,
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, that would probably be a time where all the people that covered him are out of there, and the people that are starting to put the people in probably were 5 years old when he was playing.
Right.
That kind of era there. So some good questions there today. We had a good turnout. Tell people about what we do on Monday nights, Alex.
Yeah, our Monday YouTube live stream over on my YouTube channel. You can find it just by searching my name. You can subscribe to the channel so you get alerts for when we go live. But we go live every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, answering your Steelers questions. I know, Dave, you have now put those podcasts or those streams in the podcast format. So however you're listening to this podcast, the Terrible Podcast, you can listen to the Monday live streams, including yesterday's episode on there. So for people that missed it live, you can go back and check it out that way.
Absolutely, and that was a good. And look, we've got a couple of James Conner, a couple of his new book copies of his new book that we're starting to give away, and we gave away one last night on a live stream. We'll probably give another one next Monday as well too. So if you have some time to stop by on Monday nights to participate in that, we invite you to do it. If not, you can easily listen or watch the replays of that either on SteelersDepot.com as well. If you follow the Terrible Podcast, it should be in your stream as well too. If you get a chance, go leave us a review on Apple or wherever you subscribe to the podcast at. That helps us in that aspect too. So in the meantime,
hold on here real quick, Dave. Mike Tomlin's talking to the media on a Zoom call. This is from Joe Rader saying Mike Tomlin said Matt Filey will probably take the first snaps at left guard and Tyson Alualu will get the first snaps at nose tackle once training camp begins. begin. So some news there for you.
All right. I'm sure you'll write that up very quickly here on the site there. So a good ways to kind of end this podcast with a little bit of breaking news if you waited this long. All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. If you like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com and click the ad-free button. For $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have access to an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for donating. Thank you for following along with the site. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.